Welcome to today's webinar, Goal Setting for Your Health and Wellbeing with myself, Wendy, Wellbeing Coach. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can set realistic and achievable goals for your health and wellbeing. And we're going to be looking at the ways in which goal setting can be done so that we get really long-lasting results and changes to our behaviours and habits. Perhaps you're somebody that's tried to set New Year's resolutions in the past and you haven't been able to keep that up because life's got in the way. Well, if that's so, this webinar is for you. Also, it's for you if you just really want to look at making some really positive changes and look at how coaching might be able to help you with that. So I'm going to invite you to grab a pen and paper, and whilst you're watching this recording, please do pause and make notes as we're going to go along with the video. I'm going to be inviting you to have little breaks and time to reflect on what kind of goals you might want to be setting. Okay, so let's make a start. So what we're covering today is a little bit about me and my background, how I came to be a coach. We're going to look at why goal setting is really useful. We're going to look at how to actually set these goals achievably and realistically, and how to identify the first steps that you can take towards change, and also identifying what might get in the way of the success and how to tackle this. And this is something that people often struggle with. And at the end, we'll just have a quick look at what wellbeing coaching is and how it might help you with your goal setting. So some of you already know that my background is I came to coaching from 8 years of chronic fatigue and making a full recovery from that. And coaching was a huge part of that recovery. I needed to make a lot of changes to my health and wellbeing, and I used goal setting to do that with support. And that was so effective for me. I decided to train as a wellbeing coach and a chrysalis effect specialist practitioner to support other people heading into burnout, and also supporting those with chronic exhaustive conditions like chronic fatigue, long COVID, ME, long COVID, fibromyalgia, to recover. And during my time working with the chrysalis effect, I've worked with NHS and private clients to help them to balance their energy and what they've got going on in their week by making really positive changes to their habits, to their behaviours, and in this way regaining and maintaining their mental and physical health and well-being. So goal setting is really useful because it helps us to focus on what we really want in our life and what is really important to us and why. So when we set a goal, we want to be focusing on something that we really want and we really connect with. And we need to think about why that is important to us. And goal setting helps us to think about the details of what we want to be different and to identify the steps that need to be taken. And in this process, we gain a sense of control over our future. Because without a goal being set, we can just get really easily distracted and drift through life in a really unfocused way without feeling that we have achieved anything. So I'm going to invite you now to just take a snapshot really of what's going on for you in your life at the moment. So this is the coaching wheel that we use at the Chrysalis Effect, and I use this with all my clients, and it's a really helpful tool to help you to build awareness of where you might want to make some changes. So I'm going to just talk around quickly the different parts of the wheel, the different 8 elements, and I just invite you to have a think about what might be going on for you in each of these areas of your life, and what part of the wheel would need the most attention. So nutritional health relates to your diet, your gut health, how you're eating, when you're eating. We look at things like how much sugar, caffeine, alcohol, processed foods, and other things like that you're consuming, and whether you're hydrated enough, whether you're getting enough nutrients in, how your gut health is. Are there any issues there, such as candida, parasites, leaky gut? So how do you feel your nutritional health is, I wonder, out of 10? So the idea is to score each area out of 10. And obviously 10 out of 10 would suggest that you're really happy with your nutritional health, and 1 or 2 out of 10 would suggest you have a lot of things that you'd like to change there. So your finances, how do you feel about your relationship with money? How are your finances going at the moment? Emotional health, this could be how you express yourself, how level are your emotions during the day. Do you struggle with fear, anxiety, worry? Do you struggle with anger issues? Are you reactive? Perhaps you're dealing with a bereavement and working through grief at the moment. How do you feel your emotional health is out of 10? Environment is where we spend most of our time. So how do you feel about your home environment, your work environment? Perhaps you have clutter issues, or issues with the people that are in your environment. So lots of different things to think about there. Lifestyle and pace is around how much we're trying to fit into our week and how much we're pushing ourselves, whether we have a good work-life balance, whether we're pacing our energy. If you struggle with chronic fatigue or fatigue issues, you will know that pacing is a hugely important part of the recovery process, because we need to always be mindful of how we're using our energy up during the week, and make sure that we have enough for ourselves before we give it away to other people. And it's a very important part of the wheel to look at in recovery from chronic fatigue. Relationships. We've got so many different relationships in our lives: our friends, our family, our colleagues, our parents, our siblings. So I wonder how you feel out of 10 about your relationships, and whether you feel good about those, how you feel when you're with those people. Perhaps you have draining relationships in your life. Movement is around exercise, or perhaps if you're limited because of pain and fatigue, you might want to think about more gentle forms of exercise, like yoga nidra, for example, that can be done lying down. How happy are you about how much movement you're getting into your day, into your week? And life purpose can be around the subject of career, job. It could also be around hobbies, the way that you use your gifts and talents. So you have artistic gifts. Are you expressing those, having time to bring those into the world? What do you feel your life purpose is? Do you have any ideas around that? So that's just a whistle-stop tour of all of these parts of the wheel. I have gone through these parts of the wheel in more detail in one of my other webinars, Revive and Thrive, Overcoming Fatigue. So do let me know if you'd like a copy of that recording, because I do go into the wheel in a little bit more detail around the sorts of things that you might want to consider if you are tackling fatigue. For example, in emotional health and relationships, you might want to think more about issues around boundaries and people pleasing and things like this, which can be big factors in how our energy is being given away, and also focus more on the lifestyle and pace part of the wheel, which, as I mentioned, is very important. But for the purposes of today's goal setting, I'm just giving you some examples of the sorts of things that you might consider at a high level, just to have a think about which part of the wheel might need the most attention, do you think? And how is your health and well-being being negatively affected by the issues in that area? So when you've identified that, you can think about what change you might consider making. So perhaps for today's webinar, a really good idea would be to pick one area of the wheel right now. So you might want to pause the wheel, pause the recording at this point, just to have a think about scoring those areas out of 10. And then you might want to identify which one would be a priority for you to look at, and have a think about these questions here on the right hand side of the screen. And just inviting you to pause at this point to fill that in before we move on. Now, when you have filled in your scores in every part of the wheel, you might want to draw in an arc to demonstrate your score. And then you can see when you join that up how balanced your wheel is. You'll notice here that instead of finances on this wheel from the chrysalis effect, we're looking at thyroid and adrenals. And this is because it's a very important part of fatigue recovery. So we replace the finances with thyroid and adrenals sometimes. But obviously finances are a very important issue as well. So how wonky is your wheel? When you've joined this up, this would give you a good idea of how your life is running if you were to imagine putting a wheel this wonky onto a vehicle and trying to go for a ride in it. It would be a very bumpy ride. So if that's the case for you, that might explain why, you know, life feels quite tough at times, and there might be quite a few bumps in the road for you, if you like, as you work through your week. So, as I said, do pause the recording at any time if you'd like to spend a bit more time and use this as a workshop, which you could do interactively with me. But I'm going to move on now to looking at goal setting, as that is the main topic for today. So some of you will have heard of the SMART protocol of SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. So to be successful in our goal setting, one of the really good things that we can do is to be really specific around what we want to be different. So here's some questions for you to really drill down into that, getting specific. So how would you like things to be, and by when? So think about the time frame. How would you like things to be, and by when? What will you do differently? So be specific about that. And when will you do it? So perhaps you would like to change your diet, and you'd like to be eating vegetables with every meal. You might be thinking about when you will do the meal planning. So you might recognize that you need to bring in meal planning. So that would answer what you'll do differently, because then you will make sure that you get those vegetables from the shop. When will you do it? You need to think about when you're going to do the shopping, when you're going to do the meal planning. And we can be really specific about that. So perhaps it's a Saturday, but what time on a Saturday? Would it be morning? Would it be afternoon? Would it be evening? And roughly what time, or specifically what time even? The more specific we can be, the more chance there is that we're actually going to put that into action, because we're then very, very clear about what we're doing, and there's no question about it. How will you do it? So perhaps you'll need to go and sit in another room away from family so you can concentrate. What do you need? You might need peace and quiet. You might need equipment. You might need to use a computer or to log on to certain things on the internet, have certain information to hand. So when you've thought about all of this, also consider, why is this important to you? Why is it important to you now? And that's really helpful, because if we don't connect to the goal and really want it and really feel that it's important, we're not going to feel motivated to actually do it. So we need to be specific, we need to be measurable. So that's thinking about what will be different when we've achieved this goal, when we've put this plan in practice. Perhaps we are looking to increase the number of healthy meals we have, so we can measure it quantitatively that way. Perhaps it's how we're going to feel. We're going to feel healthier. So that's more of a qualitative result. So there's different ways to measure. Achievable. Is it actually achievable? How are you going to do it? What do you need? So that's where these questions come in. And is it realistic? Is it in your control? Do you need help from somebody else? Or is it completely out of your control and therefore not something that you can take charge of? So that's important, because if something is not in your control, then is it a realistic goal? if we don't set realistic goals, we're going to be disappointed, and we're potentially going to feel like a failure when it doesn't work out, and we might beat ourselves up and feel like we haven't done a good enough job. But in fact, it was never a realistic goal to start with. So that's really important. And the timing is important too. So that's why I've asked, by when would you like things to be done? Because it's important to have some kind of time frame, so we're having some kind of accountability with what's going on. Okay, so do pause the recording here if you'd like to think about these questions some more. Perhaps you have a goal in mind now and you'd like to actually work through these questions and see if you can find the answers. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to looking at the wording of the goal. Now, this is quite important. So in goal setting, we like to keep our goals very positive. So we're focusing on what we do want to have in our life rather than what we don't want more of. So we're putting out really positive energy into the world, into the universe, to attract back positive things. And we want to keep it in the present, so we're connected, we have a vision of it happening as if it's happening now. So instead of saying I want to drink less caffeine and feel less agitated, which is around what's going on now, what we don't want more of, it's better to say I'm improving my energy levels by drinking 6 glasses of water during my day, and I'm feeling calmer and energized. So we're focusing on what we do want. It's positive focus here, and we're talking about it as if it's happening now, so we can connect with it. So we also can add an achievable time frame. So you might think of a particular date that you have in mind. This is an old slide, so we could say now, it's the 6th of April 2025. I'm doing 5 walks a week and attending a yoga class for 1 hour. I'm feeling stronger, fitter, and healthier. So it's important to connect with how you're going to feel. So not just what you're going to do differently, but how you're going to feel when you've actually done that, when you're actually doing that. And when you've achieved that, how is that going to feel? So tap into that feeling. Imagine yourself doing it. Imagine how you're going to feel different when you do it. And that all brings more content, more connection to your goal, and makes it much more likely that you're going to actually act on it and feel motivated to do that, because you're going to have a much clearer idea of what the benefits are going to be. So, as I said, make sure it's realistic, that it's in your control. Think about, how committed are you? How committed do you feel once you've set the goal and you've worked out this wording? And if you're not 10 out of 10 committed, what is getting in the way? And we're going to have a look at that in a minute. So remember to break things down into achievable small steps. And if you're struggling with health issues and fatigue and brain fog, this is even more important. Remember that we can, just look at improving 1 or 2% a week, okay? Because in a year's time, we're going to get to that 100%. But recovery and change is never linear. So we're going to have weeks where we make a lot of progress and other weeks where we might slip back a bit. And that's completely normal. We don't expect to always improve by 1 or 2% a week. It's really important to be aware of that and not to slip into beating ourselves up, because we have to remember that the brain always wants to be working with what's familiar. It's much easier for us to just stay in our default state and go back to what is normal for us, what feels comfortable for us, what feels safe for us. It's really hard work to make changes and to change our habits and behaviours. So we need to work quite hard at embedding these new habits and being really connected to them and intentional. And the steps that we're working through today are really going to help you to actually make sure that you do change your habits. And I'm reading a really great book at the moment called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I also recommend. And there's different ways that we can change our habits by bringing in tools such as habit stacking, he recommends, where we think about bringing in a new habit at a time that comes right after or right before something else that we've already got in place. So say, for example, you always have your shower at around 7:30. You could bring in a new habit after you have your shower. So you're really clear that after you have your shower, you're then going to do your exercises or whatever it is. That is something he calls habit stacking, and I think it's a really great idea to connect a new habit to a habit that you've already got in place. It just makes sense to make it as easy for yourself as possible. But getting clear about your system is another thing that he really talks about a lot. Goals are no good on their own. We need to have the systems in place to make sure we know how we're going to put the goal into practice. And actually, the system is even more important than the goal. Okay, so we're going to look now at some of the things that can get in the way and stop people from achieving their goals. So once you set your goal, and feel free to stop the recording if you still need to spend a bit more time on that. But if you've got your goal in place now, I want to just invite you to think about the sorts of things that could get in the way of you actually taking action. And have a think about when you've set intentions and resolutions before, what's actually stopped you if it hasn't been successful. So this is going back to the system that James Clear talks about. So as coaches, we're trained to help people to identify the obstacles to change. So very often the sorts of things that people will say could get in the way when I ask them how committed they are to pursuing their goal would be, I don't have the time always to do my meal planning, or I might not have the money to do something. Sometimes people might feel fearful or overwhelmed about making steps, and that's why coming back to baby steps is really important. We can also have quite a lot of negative thoughts that we might not be capable of doing it. So self-limiting beliefs around lack of confidence or self-worth. And the other things that can get in the way, excuse me, are lack of support or accountability. So it can be really helpful to have a buddy to check in with, to inquire how you're getting on with the new habit. And that could be a family member, a partner, or a coach, such as myself. And that's one of the things that working with a coach is really helpful for, because the accountability can make a massive difference. We can also sometimes have confusion over our values. So we might want to make a change, but actually we believe that things should be done in a different way. So perhaps we want to pull back on helping out with something because we don't have the energy to do it at the moment, but we have a very strong value of duty that's been handed down to us by our parents perhaps, and that is driving us to keep giving our energy away to whatever it is. Say you volunteer for something, for example, and you're getting more and more exhausted and would like to stop, but you don't feel you can say that you're going to stop because you don't want to feel that you're not fulfilling your duty or helping people enough. And working with a coach can be really helpful here because we can really dig into those values and do some exercises around what the hidden drivers are that cause us to behave in certain ways that can be causing us to drain our energy or to be unhappy or in conflict. It can be really useful to look at values, and values drive our belief systems. So with regards to time, we all have the same amount of time in our week, and we all have different things that we have to do, particularly if we're working or we have children or we have looking after elderly relatives. But we all have some amount of time during our week that we can choose what we do with. And this is where we need to look at how are we using that time. Perhaps we're using some of that time binge watching Netflix, scrolling on our phone, and we could be taking back half an hour or an hour a week to putting in place some really positive habits that are actually going to restore us, to calm our nervous systems, to improve our health and well-being. So it can be really useful to consider whether it's really true that you don't have time. We all have the power to make choices about what we do with our time, with our money. And as I said, if you're feeling held back by a lack of confidence, coaching can be really useful to overcome these negative thoughts. 90% of our thinking is unconscious. We tend to be thinking a lot about staying safe, staying comfortable, and also these self-limiting beliefs that we're not even aware of. And we can bring those into the conscious sphere by working on them and by discussing them, discussing what could be getting in the way. And then once we've brought them into the conscious part of our mind, we can choose to start looking at them. Are these beliefs true? And making really positive changes to be able to move forwards in the way that we really want to. Okay, so just some questions for you to consider as we come to the end of the webinar. Just some things to have a think about, really. If you're making changes or wanting to make changes to support your health and well-being, what changes do you know you need to make right now? And what might be getting in the way of you doing this? So just have a think about that. What support do you need and from where? So who could help you? What are you telling yourself, perhaps, that is holding you back from making these positive changes? And if you're feeling really stuck and just can't seem to get going, have a think about how it will impact you in 1 year, or say in 5 years even, if you don't make any changes. And that can bring up some pretty uncomfortable feelings, but use that in a positive way to feel more motivated to take action. So that worst case scenario can sometimes be quite helpful. Also, then you can flip it around and imagine that you have made the changes and really immerse yourself in how it feels to have everything, as you would love it to be. How would that feel? And really engage with that. That can also be incredibly motivating. So do feel free to pause the recording again here if you'd like to spend a bit more time on thinking about these questions. So as I said, if you were to work with a coach such as myself, the benefits of that are that we get to work on all of these underlying issues that can sometimes stop us from being able to move forwards on our own. So coaches are non-directive and non-judgmental. We work on what is important for you, what is a priority for you right now, and we work on the basis that the client has the answers inside of them. So my job is to empower you to find those solutions that work for you, and to help you build awareness, as I mentioned before, of any negative subconscious thought patterns that might be playing out that are getting in the way that you're not able to work out for yourself. And then I offer accountability to support you to keep you on track with your goal setting. And I can also offer advice and resources to support your health and well-being if there's something in particular you need help with. So I'm just going to finish off by just posting here my contact details. So as I mentioned, if you are struggling with chronic fatigue, long COVID, fibromyalgia, ME, do get in touch with me to ask about the chrysalis effect. I offer a free 30-minute, no obligation discovery call. If you'd like to find out more about how coaching could help you to make changes to your diet, your fitness, your career, your relationships, or if you specifically want to get into my specialist area, which is fatigue and chronic pain, then do find out about the chrysalis effect by going to this link. And there is a month's free trial available, but I'm very happy to have a chat with you. If you'd like to find out more, you can get in touch with me and we can have that chat. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Wendy Day Wellbeing. And in the comments below, I'm going to post my link to my newsletter if you'd like to receive monthly tips from me in my wellbeing newsletter. And please do consider subscribing on YouTube for more videos which I have coming up in the next few months. And my email address is also there on the screen. So I do hope that you've found this webinar helpful and that you've been able to start to think about what kind of goals you might want to set, what the details of those are, what could get in the way of them being successful. And it just remains for me to say, I wish you a happy and healing week ahead. And do get in touch if you have any questions or if you'd just like to have a chat and find out more about how I work and see if we're a good fit to work together, all the information about my packages and coaching work is on my website, wendydaywellbeing.co.uk. I will post all the links below. And thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you in the next video.